You have been unmuted. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the live stream. It is Tuesday, March 21st, and we are talking about bank failures and the Fed lending rate and where the heck is the 2023 real estate market going to go. One of the things I think is super important before we start any of this is real estate is local. There is no such thing as a national real estate market. It is the national made up of a bunch of smaller markets. And you can have one market go up while another one goes down. But before we get to that, first and foremost, tell us where you're coming from. Tell us what marketplace you're in, what place of the world. We'd love to hear that. As we go through this evening, feel free to throw any and every question underneath the sun into the chat. Sean is going to be moderating next to me. And he will either bring it up if he thinks it's applicable right away.
What's up, guys?
Yep. And then if it is not applicable, we will put it towards the end and answer. And if you just want to ask general questions about the real estate market as a whole, or even specific questions about coastal Virginia, I would love to field those. But as we start out the night, we're going to start off with some libations. Tonight's libation is Basil Hayden. And this is a gift from Lily and Jamie, who are on my team, as a birthday gift. So thank you, thank you. My birthday was March 17th, turned 39. All those grays coming in strong. All right, there you go, Sean. I'll let you pour your own. So cheers to you guys for showing up, if you did show up. If not, Sean and I'll be drinking alone.
It's true. Show up.
I'll let that mellow just a bit. All right, so like I said, we're going to go into a couple things. I am not a banking expert. I do, stay up on top of news articles. I do read a decent amount. I do study this on a regular occasion, but by no means am I. Oh, thank you, Sean. By no means am I a banking expert. From what I understand about SVB is that they were under and over leveraged in the wrong areas. I didn't even have a risk manager for a long period of time, which is ridiculous. Some of this is the pain of the Fed raising rates and them being over leveraged in certain areas put them at severe risk. And so not surprised. The more that I read into it, the less it surprised me that certain banks were going under. It'll be interesting to see what goes on there. But like I said, we're going to kind of quickly go through some of these slides. So Sean, if you'll bring up our slides there, I'd appreciate it. So bank failures in real estate. Go ahead and go to the next one. Or actually, I can control it, right?
Yep.
Cool. Oh man, I should have made that a little neater. We got headlines. Banking crisis hangs over the economy, rekindling recession fear. Do recent bank failures signal a recession similar to 2008? Already past the point of no return, JP Morgan says that the U.S. is probably headed for a recession as economic engines are about to turn off. And one of the things that you have to understand when at least it comes to mortgage rates, the rate at which you are borrowing money to buy your home, is that for probably the last 50 years of data that we've looked at, nearly every single time, rates have come down during recessions. When unemployment goes up, rates tend to come down, and unemployment tends to go up during a recession. Go ahead. I got it. There we go. And so instead of just telling you, there's the data yourself. You have the mortgage rate, and then you have the recessions there in dark blue. And you can see how these rates have changed during these recessions, basically showing it comes down. And another thing to kind of pay attention to this slide is notice how this is all the way back to early 1970s. Early 1970s rates were around 7.5%. And we're going to hit a little bit about this whole, it's pretty common today in social media for there to be these little clips or memes of people like, well, my grandparent bought one for 83 cents or 83 beans. And those people don't understand inflation. You don't understand, if you're making those claims, you don't understand how inflation works. And I'm going to make prove my point here in just a second. So right here. So we'll go into the next one. So housing affordability. We'll get back into rates here in a second. But housing affordability, is it high? Yeah, it's high. Did we come out of a 10-year low? Yes, we did, and I'll show you that here in a second. Is it at the highest it's ever been? Actually, no. Actually, it's not. So when you hear people on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube saying it is, as a relationship to income, no, it's not. And I don't think, unfortunately, that in major cities where inventory is a problem, that's likely to change anytime quickly. And I'll show you why here in a second. So this is a chart that I use often when I'm trying to get someone to understand what is housing affordability in relationship to history. And we're gonna get a couple different takeaways here. And I'm gonna try to go as quickly as possible because I have a tendency, as Sean knows and my friends know, to wax and wane poetic a little too long. But what you see here are two different things: interest rate and payment to income ratio. Okay. Now, yes, is it principal and interest only? Yes. Is it estimating a 20% down? Yes. But we have to have some type of standard or some type of line so that when we're comparing things year to year to year to year, that we have something that we're staring at that keeps everything homogenous. Because if you compare oranges to apples, you want to make sure you're doing proper comparisons, apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So green is interest rate, and blue is the average payment to buy the average home as a percentage at the average interest rate at the time as a percentage of the average income at the time. So in 1977, the average person was spending 25%-ish of their income to buy the average home at the time at the average interest rate. In 1982, you can see that they were spending nearly 55%. That is crazy, 55%. And I'm sure grandma and grandpa or your mom and dad may have basically said, you don't have any clue how hard I had it. And in some ways, they were right. If you're spending 55% of your income on a housing payment, yeah, it's tough. That's high. That's really, really high. Now, did it come down very drastically? Yes. And when I say drastically, one of the things you have to realize is for the majority of the last 50 years, drastic means typically months and months, right? Like this rate increase was over a 9-month period of time, and that pain was felt because it was so much changed so quickly. Like if you look right here, from 2003 to 2000 and say like 13, the average ranged from like 2.5-4% up to 6% for a decade, for a long period of time. So one of the things that I want you to take away from here is look how lockstep the cost of borrowing money, the cost of basically buying a house, because that's what you're doing, you're borrowing money, it is with the rate and how tight that is. Now, right around here in 2001 is when you start seeing a little bit of a separation there. What's interesting is that prices kind of remained flat for several years. Again, understand that a lot of these things take years to develop. 2001 to 2004, as interest rates were continuing to go down, prices, or again, the cost to borrow for a house as a percentage of the average income remained about the same for a couple of years. And then you can see it started going up. And even though interest rates kind of remained, this isn't going to help, but here we go. Some Danism. You would not, or maybe you would be really pleasantly surprised to see how many of those pop up and get edited out of YouTube videos. Danisms. All right. The cost of borrowing as a percentage of income went up even though interest rates remained the same. This is because home prices were going up so quickly, and we'll cover this, how that applied to our market here in a minute. It went so quickly that it started to divorce. And then you had the crash started happening in late 06 or mid to late 06 and early 07. And then you can see the cost of borrowing came down. Now, here's what I was trying to say earlier is that we've been kind of spoiled for about 10 years. Out of the last 50 years, and I don't have data going back further, otherwise I'd love to bring that up too. But at least in the last 50 years, the last 10 have been somewhere between like 15, 17% and 23%. All-time lows for nearly a decade. Now, when you go from all-time lows to jacking up the interest rate this quickly, well then the percentage of the average income to buy the average house at the average interest rate is really, really painful, right? And you can see that this this rise in average cost to buy a home, we haven't really seen that in a while since the early 80s there. I hope that makes sense. You might need to go back and rewatch that. Feel free to screenshot any of this, and maybe we'll include the slides or something at the end. Okay? Sean, please feel free to stop me there if none of that makes sense, because I look at it all day long and that makes sense in my head.
No, I think that was simple.
All right. So a couple of things that what people are going to be looking at is, hey Dan, what about foreclosures? I've heard a lot about foreclosures. This is I brought this up. This is July 27 of 2022. But this is what the headlines tend to do. They tend to focus on gloom and doom. There's a statistic. It's like negative headlines are like 900% more likely to get attention than positive ones. And websites understand this. CNN, Fox News, they all understand this. And so foreclosures are up 700%. Is this the red flag for the housing market? You know what was happening right here? Like forbearance issues were being basically removed from the table. And so all the people that were in forbearance programs were now going up. So they're going back into like foreclosure process. But so what does that actually look like? Oh shoot, I have a slide out of order. Let's see if we can come back to that. Well, where's it at? Oh shoot, I have that one twice. Well, crap on a stick. Okay, here we go. So here's from 2020, and we'll go backwards. Here's from 2020 all the way to today, the amount of loans going into forbearance. And the differences here are conventional loan product, FHA, and VA, and then the total. And you can see that it skyrocketed. There were a whole bunch of people that took advantage of this. Oh, wait a minute, I don't have to pay my mortgage payment, and there's like zero consequence in doing so. I knew people who had plenty of money in the bank that were like, well, I'm going to take all my mortgage payments, put it into the stock market, and then when they remove it, I'll go back and get caught up. And they made like an extra 12 grand in their pocketbook because of the interest or the investment money that they were making. All right. Well, let's also look at foreclosure history, right? So what we have to understand is that once the forbearance was lifted, yes, we had a drastic increase on the amount of homes that were going into foreclosure or foreclosure filings. But when you take that in context of history, this is 2005 right here, and then we peaked out in 2010, crash started in 6, right? That this took years for this to happen. And so we are still very, very low in history. Sean, I see a chat up there. Is that somebody asked a question?
Nope, that's me.
Okay, cool. One of the other things to understand about foreclosures is that the length of foreclosure, how long it takes for people to go through the foreclosure process, has gone up, not down. And it's right around 900 days today. This is not the most updated one. This is Q3 of 2022. It's around 900 days. So, what, 2.5 years? Am I right? 2 3/4?
Yeah.
2 3/4 years. So even if we do start seeing a lot of foreclosures pop up, the likelihood that it takes a long time for those to hit the market is relatively low. Here's some other ones that it's really important to understand about this, and we'll go back to those other slides here in just a second, is homeowner equity on mortgage properties. Equity has bottomed out right around in 2011, but we have consistently gone up. Has it retracted some? Yes, it absolutely has. And depending on the market that you're in, some of it's going to be more drastic than others. But one of the things you have to understand is that properties that have just been purchased are the ones that are most likely, most recently, the ones that are going to be upside down. But most people, if they are buying homes with the idea of living in it long term, are going to be fine, right, over the long period of time. Here goes your negative equity rates in the volume. So you have underwater and you have limited equity. Limited equity is 10% or less. And the reason that they use that number is because the general across the nation average across the board is about 10% to sell your home. Right? And so underwater mortgages, again, are still very, very, very low. Limited equity positions are still very, very, very low. And I think I might have to go backwards. Okay, here we go. Back to, boom. So two things I think we need to understand here is that even if we do see a retraction in prices, which, again, depending on the market that you're in, you may not see any. and in Hampton Roads so far, I'm not seeing much of, if any at all, is that 92% of all mortgages are below 5%. I'll say that again. 92% of all mortgages that exist are below 5%. That is massive. 50% of all mortgages that exist are below 3.5. Average cost to borrow today is like 6.75. Why would I move? If I bought in 17, 18, 19, 20, or 21, I have seen the market go up 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50% in value, depending on the marketplace. And the cost to borrow has gone through the roof. There's nearly zero incentive for me to move. And you're going to see a lot of this. This is called the rate lock problem. I know a couple of different guys that call it the poison pill that the Fed put in the market. They lowered rates to all-time lows. They did quantitative easing, which means that when people go out and sell mortgages and then they run out of money to borrow and they have to turn around and sell that off to investment products and mortgage-backed securities to get a new lump of money to go out and lend, then they turn around and they're removing the risk of what they have to do that. So imagine Sean over here has $100 billion worth he's got to lend. Good job, Sean. Well done, buddy. And you've got $100 billion that you got to lend. And you lend all of those out at 2% interest rates. Once you're out of that money, you now have to sell all of those mortgage-backed securities so that you can go out and originate, that's where the term loan origination comes from, more loans. And so you say, hey, Dan, would you like to buy this from me? I go, I'll give you $101 billion there, Sean. You just made a clean billion profit. Well done, buddy. If the federal government comes in and says, hey, I'll buy anything and everything you have, Sean now has zero risk on how low of a rate that he gives because that's been removed, right? Otherwise, he'd have to go and compete with other people that are also selling mortgages who maybe wrote it at a slightly higher interest rate, right? So I think it's an important thing to understand. I hope that makes sense. Again, go back and rewatch the last minute or so there if that didn't make sense. Here's the same chart, but just in a different kind of format. This green line is the cumulative share of the market, and then here are the interest rates down at the bottom. So just kind of showing here's that 50%, right about there, 3.5, boom. So all of these mortgages are below 3.5%. Look at this huge chunk right here, Sean. 2.75%. Another massive chunk right here, or excuse me, that's that's right, 2.625. There's still another massive chunk, 2.5, 2.35, 2.25. That is just incredible. You even have this many right here that are below 2%. That is just absolutely incredible, right? So you get this massive chunk. And here you go right here, 80%, boom, 80% below 4.5. That is just wild to me. Another thing to just kind of understand is that the average tenure has tended to go up, not down, over history. This is Redfin data. I was looking at one that went all the way back to 1980. But in general, the average time that someone tends to own a property has gone up, not down, which means that you pay the mortgage longer. You tend to own it longer, which means you have lower payment, you had a chance to refi and lower your payments. You pay the note down longer. You can rent it out and have somebody else pay it. In Virginia Beach, that's 13.7. I see one viewer, Sean. Hurts my feelings.
I know.
That's okay.
It's hurting mine too.
Here we go. All right. Another thing to kind of pay attention to is that since 2004, 2006, when the crash had happened, the amount people are putting down has gone up, not down. I know this is kind of boring, but if you're wanting to know where the market's going and what's happening, it's important to look at data and not just, trust me, bro type things. When people are putting more down on the property, they're less and less likely to be in negative equity positions. This has gone up, not down, in the last decade or decade and a half. Where are they sourcing that down payment? Well, 83% of it is coming from personal savings. 28% of it's coming from a gift, loan, or family. That's actually gone down over time, not up, which means that they're getting the money themselves. That's a good sign. And 10% and 12% come from stocks and bonds and pensions. And again, that's come up, not down over time, meaning that people are pulling those funds from their own personal savings. That's a good sign. All right, foreclosures, length of foreclosure, negative equity trends. Now here's an interesting chart, and something to kind of understand what I mean by like depending on the market. This is the inventory of homes listed for sale and the change from 17 to today. Okay, so you take a place like Las Vegas, and they were low, stayed low in 2018, came up way high in early 19, came way low again. Look how volatile that marketplace is. And then this massive swing right here to the upside, which means when you go from here in early 2022 to here in late 2022, you go from a seller's market to a buyer's market within a half a year. That's a huge swing. And what you tend to find is there are markets, what Jason Hartman calls them, linear versus exponential markets, is that these markets that have these massive swings tend to be the ones that have the largest correction. If you'll notice here, what do you see right here in Virginia Beach? Our marketplace. Well, that's that green line. We started a little bit high in 2018, and it has slowly gone down to the lowest of early 2022, which I can tell you from personal experience taking out clients, that was the time that I was having to write the most aggressive offers. But what do you notice from early 22 to today? Not much has changed. Has it come up? Yes. And during this come up, were we like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Because we started seeing it come up. Yes, I was feeling that. But unfortunately, our inventory is so stinking low that it hasn't really changed much. Okay. This is another chart. Only 4 of the top 50 markets continue to see prices on a seasonally adjusted basis. And this is from BlackKnight.Inc. if you're wanting to read some of this yourself. Kansas City, Indianapolis, Virginia Beach, and Louisville. While 40% of the markets have seen price decline by up to 2%, 24% decline seen from 3 to 5%. But you can see what's interesting here is where those locations of those markets are actually going down. You see the largest portion of down markets are here on the West Coast. The largest portion of ones going slightly down to kind of moderately sideways are a little bit located here in the Southeast. And then the ones that are slightly up to mostly sideways happen to be here in the upper Midwest and East. Interesting how that works. Real estate is a local phenomenon. Local. And that includes even here when we're talking about the difference between like Virginia Beach and Suffolk, oceanfront versus Franklin, new construction Chesapeake versus Williamsburg. That makes a difference. All right. Again, if you have any questions on here whatsoever, please put them in the chat. I'd love to hear from where you're coming from. Some of this stuff is kind of medium level, and some of this is a little bit decently high level. So feel free to say, Dan, that didn't make sense. Please explain it again. So here's kind of one of the things that you need to understand if you're trying to understand what's going to happen in the interest rate area. Back to what I was saying at the beginning, which is that if a bank is failing, that tends to put the Fed in a defensive position. A defensive position means that they tend to either keep rates where they're at or lower them because they don't want this thing to get out of hand. Now, one of the things also to understand is that the mortgage rates have a much higher tendency to be in lockstep with the 10-year Treasury spread or the 10-year Treasury bond. So the spread between what you lend money out, or borrow for mortgage rates and what the Treasury is, tends to be between 175 to 200 basis points, or 1.75% and 2%. And that spread has most recently been about 2.75% to 3%, meaning that there's volatility in the market, and anytime there's volatility, people tend to be a little bit more risk averse. They want a little bit higher return for their dollars. And so as more certainty comes into play or a recession hits, it is most likely that mortgage rates will slowly come down, not go up. Because I know some people are like, oh yeah, they're going to 10%. I'm like, most things that I'm seeing, and based on most historical trends, that's not necessarily the case. Wanted to show you one more thing here. Oh, here, I'll just drag it over. I don't know if, am I sharing, which screen am I sharing, Sean?
That one there.
This one? Okay. So this is a really, it's interesting to me. So I'll say that. It's interesting to me because one of the things I say over and over and over again is that it's supply versus demand, right? Everything on the marketplace is determined by supply and demand. The whiskey that we're drinking, or bourbon, excuse me. This Mac laptop, getting your lawn mowed, your Starbucks coffee is determined by supply and demand. How much of something is available versus how many people are willing and able to buy that thing. You could have a lot of willing people, but if you don't have the money, like I'm really willing to buy a Icon 4x4 restored Bronco, but I don't have $250,000 laying around. So willing and able is an important part to put of that equation. Okay, so I'm gonna before I kind of go into this, I want to kind of show exactly what I mean by this. So I'm gonna log in real quickly here into our RAIN system, which is our MLS system. And I'm going to go to our analytics, which is called Domus Analytics. I'm going to go really quickly down to Market Insights. And you're going to see what has the median sales price been in our marketplace for the last 20 years. Okay, and here's 2004 in the run-up to 2006. Notice how this run-up is actually more aggressive than this run-up right here. Right, we had very kind of normal appreciation happening, and then it went pew right here in the last 3 years. But this is actually a little bit more aggressive. And so if you're thinking, okay, Dan was talking about supply and demand. For this to happen, I have to think about this. All right, either supply has to come way down, right, because the amount of people didn't change, and the amount of things available went way, way down, so a lot of people bidding on something, right, go up. Or two, the amount of people available to buy something went way up as well, okay? Or some mixture of those two items. So if I can look at, crazy enough, how many houses were available for sale during that period of time. Give it a second. That's not true. There we go. Boom. And you see that housing inventory or supply went from 3,000 to 16,000, 15, 16,000 during this period of time. A quadruple or tripling, right? And your brain should be going, wait a minute, Dan, you just said supply had to go down, not up. That should set alarm bells off in your brain that this is not the same market that we have today as we did here. Demand was so insane during this period of time that we quadrupled inventory and still saw that run up. That is ridiculous, okay? That's how silly this period of time was. And it took 08, 09, 010 till supply started coming down and we saw kind of a normalized market. And so let me go over to my favorite metric, which is months of supply, and we'll kind of finish on this, okay? Months of supply is my favorite metric. Why? Because it balances perfectly supply divided by demand. All right, so how many homes are available of something, and then divided by how many people are out there buying it currently. Now, really strong seller's market right here. 6 right here is neutral, doesn't necessarily favor buyers or sellers. The higher you go above, more of a buyer's market. The closer you go to 0, the more of a seller's market. And we saw from 04, then there's 05, there's 06, 07, 08, 09, and then 010, right? Took years for this swing to happen. This is why when people say, I think that the market is going to correct 20 or 30% in 1 year, I go, what are you talking about? It is very, very, very unlikely that's going to happen. Very unlikely. Now, here you go. We're kind of back down here in neutral territory. Here's 2012. And here's what you can see is that summer and winter tend to be pretty separated, right? Here's summer, here's winter. Here's summer, here's winter. Here's summer, here's winter. That summer tends to be more aggressive than winter, right? And right around March, April time of 2020, when COVID hit, when half the people in the marketplace decided they weren't going to put their house on the market because That's kind of how it worked, is that politically or belief system wise, half people thought it was fake and the other half of the people thought it was the end of the world. Go figure, when half the people don't put their housing in the market and inventory, the amount of houses, go back over here to active listings, goes down drastically. Give it a second. And boom, right here, March, what happened? Inventory tanked, absolutely tanked. We saw high during the summer, tanked during winter, came up back during the summer, tanked back into the winter. This cycle happens every single year. So months of supply has been at all-time lows. Are we in a buyer's market? No. Hell no, we're not. Did I take advantage of the winter market with a few buyers and get some closing cost assistance and negotiate some deals because sellers were a little bit more anxious about what's going on in the news? Absolutely, I did. Did I say during September, October, November timeframe that winter is coming and this is a prime time to buy for people, even though you're seeing headlines? Because every single winter, people, yes, I said that. You can go back and watch that in some of my videos. And I got some of the better deals. But I wrote an offer. I've written 2 offers just to give you context. One, house was listed at $485,000. Got 16 offers. My people were cash buyers, up to $520. Home inspection for information purposes only. Close in 30 days. Give them another 30 days rent back for free, and they lost. A cash buyer. And I can give you a couple different scenarios with that, but I don't want to bore you. So, why can I so very confidently say that months of supply, in my opinion, tends to be best overall indicator of what is going to happen in housing in each marketplace? Well, I have the data to show you. Because this is the National Association of Realtors reported month-over-month supply, right, over the change in house price since I think is it 99? Yep, here we go, 1999. So every single one of these dots is a month, okay? And what happened during that month and what the supply was, and that's where the dot is. And so remember what I said, 6 is neutral? There's 6 right there. Going towards 0 is seller's market, which would mean that housing prices should go up. Well, go figure. The lower the number is, the higher the correlation is with a change of a positive housing appreciation. Does that make sense, Sean?
Yeah.
And so this is a national housing market. Now, are there times where months of supply is 6, so considered a neutral market, and we still see appreciation? Well, looky there. Yeah. Are there times that it's at 6 and it's negative? Well, looky there. Yes, there is. But that correlation is extremely strong. At least I would say it is. Right? And what do you see where the majority of the housing market? Well, at 4 months of supply, maybe 5, 3.5, somewhere in that range, we tend to see a range of 0.25 to 1.5 or 1.25 appreciation per month. That's pretty strong correlation, right? You come down here into a buyer's market at 10 months of supply, and you see the range here, but it still tends to be negative. Funny enough, like look right here, this is really interesting. Again, interesting to me because I'm a nerd. At 9 months of inventory, which would be historically considered a buyer's market, and decently strong so, we still saw positive appreciation for a few of these months nationally. Pretty interesting. But we've also seen as low as and most aggressive at negative 1.6, somewhere in that range. So this is why this is my favorite metric, and I use it over and over and over again, is because it's very reliable. Okay, so there you go. That is my overall market indicator. So let me kind of show you one last thing on our local market. So here we go. What are we on time, Sean? Are we doing okay?
Yep, 8:35.
Cool. All right, I wanted to try to keep this as short as possible, and I feel like I've consolidated a lot of info in a short period of time here.
Yeah.
All right, so back over here to Domus Analytics. And something I want to kind of show you, because I pay attention to the weekly trends, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people only pay attention to monthly. And I want to look at just days on market. It's another really good indicator what's going on. So here's last year, March of last year, right? Really low. Remember what I said about months of supply being really, really low and it being really aggressive and early? Well, there you go. March, April right there. Super aggressive. It actually probably was a little lower than this. Why? Because if all of the houses here in this week went under contract on 5 days on market, I can tell you from personal listing experience and working with buyers as well. But as a listing on the listing side, you get to this position where you put the house on the market on like a Thursday or Friday, your phone absolutely blows up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you kind of go, okay, guys, the seller has been literally out of their house all weekend long. No more showings. Everybody give me your best offer by Monday. We'll review them then. And then it literally takes us a half a day to put together 10, 15 offers, make sure that we call all the lenders, make sure that we check, proof of funds, make sure that their contract is written properly, make sure we're balancing out the escalation clauses properly, all of those things into consideration, and then talking to the seller. And sometimes they need a night to sleep on it. So this thing could go under contract within 3 or 4 days, and they're not really marking it till day 6. Kind of a weird, I don't understand. But let me move on. So as interest rates go out through the year, typically actually 6, 7, and 8 would be the peak months, right? But the market was actually slowing down a little faster than what we were anticipating. And I called it right around in this time frame, hey, I think this winter is going to be super slow because there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, okay? And what happened? Slower, 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 slower. January 14th, it rolls around. Next week, 23, all right? Now imagine you're blocking off this and over, but this wouldn't be too outside the norm because you can kind of see ups and downs right here, right? Well, the next week, what do I see? 18. I go, interesting. That's a little bit lower than I thought it would be. Next week happens, 15. Okay, that's no longer just a outlier. That is a indicator that the market is picking up pretty strongly. What happens? It comes up a little bit to 18. I go, okay, well, we'll see where it goes from here. Next week, 17. I go, we have already started the summer market in February. And what's wild to me is interest rates were about 7% here, and it's done nothing but go down and consistently stayed here. I think this summer has a very, very strong chance to be decently aggressive. It's going to be very frustrating for first-time home buyers because they're competing against cash offers, of which was 1 out of 5 offers last year. I think like 17% or something like that. You're competing against people who are selling a house and buying the next one and have cash to put into it. People that can cover their own closing costs. So what I would encourage you, not to sound too discouraging, but I would encourage you is that if you are looking to buy, you need to enter into this with some patience. Okay, you need to be willing and able to go out and write a couple different offers because you might be competing against somebody who's lost out on their 6th or 7th offer and they're tired. They're in what I call F-it mode. Dan, what the hell's it? Just tell me, just write up the offer. You know what we can afford. I'll sign it. I don't want to see it. Just get me into a house. I have to be in there in 30 days. I've had that happen before. I've had it happen where someone got $60,000 from grandma and they just have more money to play with than the average bear as a first-time home buyer. So I can tell you right now, if we're in the beginning of March and we're at 13 days on market, it's probably going to be competitive this summer. Yes, does inventory tend to go up? Right? We talked about yearly cycles because one of the questions that tends to come up is, hey, Dan, should I wait till summer to buy because inventory tends to go up? And I go, well, yeah, it does. There is a very strong correlation of new listings. So if I go to active listings, give me a second, you can see winter low, summer high, winter low, summer high, right? Is there an upswing? Sure. Now, really what we want to look at is new listings. I don't want to try to stay out of the weeds here if I can. Come on, wake up. Do. You're probably halfway through yours. I'm over here chatting.
That's probably not. There it is.
Now, this is what's interesting, right? Again, I find it interesting. There's winter. December, low of December, and what happens every summer, right? What's interesting to me is that for 20 years, the amount of homes actually coming on the market hasn't really changed all that much. Isn't that weird? Yeah. But the amount of active inventory, because of the amount of buyers that are in the marketplace, has eaten up all the listings and kept inventory low. Pretty interesting. So yes, do new listings come on every single summer? Yes, but guess what also comes on every single summer? More and more demand. More buyers. So you probably will have more options, but you'll have equal, if not a little bit more, competition. And why do I say that? Because you have more competition because days on market goes down. I hope that makes sense. During the winter, you might have less supply, but it warrants enough for houses to sit on the market for 60 days, or like in 2017. Do more listings come on? Yes. But more buyers come on, so much so that days on market actually goes down to 34 in 2017. So that would be my answer to you, is that if you were trying to avoid as much competition as possible, you probably need to get out there now, like right now. If you are a seller and you're trying to get as much money as possible, you and I need to talk right now, because it takes anywhere between 1 to 3 months to get that thing properly listed, because Sean and I do really badass listing videos, and it takes a week to get out there, do all the filming, and make sure it gets edited right, and we try to get 4, 5, 6 pieces of really good content out. And the only way we can do that is if we have time. If you want to do it right, like our listing in East Beach, let me brag on the Billix for a second, because the Billix hired me early, and we went out there, and we did professional pre-inspection on the house, and we did termite moisture on the house, and we hired a handyman company to come out and knock out a whole bunch of stuff. And then we disclosed what the home inspection was, because it wasn't too terrible. And we also said, here's all the things that we've done. We have to clear a termite moisture letter. And we got listed at 780 or 779. And we are currently under contract well above that. I can't disclose what that is right now, but well above that. Very well above that. Very, very favorable terms. And so, again, if you want to sell for the most amount of money, it's going to be summer. If you're a buyer, it's going to be winter or early spring. All right? Any questions, Sean? I don't know if any of you come up.
Yeah, I was going to ask, let me hide this here. What, if you were to summarize kind of that whole market synopsis that you just gave here, what would be, kind of like Michael Scott asks, if I'm a 5-year-old, can you
Mommy and Daddy have a lemonade stand, yeah. Okay, yeah. In general, negative news about the economy and banks tends to pressure the Fed to lower rates, not raise them. Rates coming down tends to bring in more buyers, because the lower the interest rate, the more people that can afford homes. More buyers in the marketplace means more competition. More competition means the housing prices don't tend to go down. That's about as simple as I can make it. Now, every marketplace is going to be a little bit different, but based on everything that we went over today in our marketplace, I easily see 5 to 10% appreciation this year, even with 7% interest rates. The data's there. We just looked at it. Is that it?
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, cheers. Thanks for tuning in. My 2 people here at the very end. If you want to say hello, feel free to say hello. Tell me where you're coming from. Tell me if that was helpful, or if that was just, Dan, that was dreadfully boring. I cannot believe that you droned on for 44 minutes about market data. That's what I do, man. That's what I do. All right, well, cheers. Peace out, people.